eat pie. That's when you eat pie.
We're going to talk about pie in a minute. The road to freedom begins, ladies and gentlemen, when you turn the television off, believe me. I'm not being facetious. You've got to break that horrible tool of oppression, subjugation, programming, and mind control. And you've got to start thinking on your own. That's the key. The greatest mesmerizer in history. Back in a minute to talk a little pie with our friends as we continue. Okay, and we're back. It is the end of, some fruit pies, but pumpkin pie season is upon us. Pumpkin pie season runs all the way through, of course, the Christmas holidays. We like pies around here, but George and Clif really like pies.
Really,
yeah.
I mean, that's it. That's the be-all and end-all. On the other side, yes, go ahead.
I would say it's a nice form of encapsulated calories, and it takes the edge off when you're dealing with what is otherwise rather depressing information all the time. So
it's a must.
And properly done, there's very little sucrose, lots of good healthy fructose, some vitamin C, just really good balance.
Well, it's either that or Valium.
Or vodka.
Pies are probably cheaper too, so yeah,
way cheaper.
Vitamin V. Okay. But food, that's another thing. We've talked a long time about food preparedness, and as we see more and more Americans hitting the tents, hitting the streets, literally, sleeping in their cars, this winter is coming, and we've been saying for months it's going to be a long winter. But above and beyond that, all this talk about 2012, gentlemen, continues. And if a populace was ever ripe to be really strung out on something through clever manipulation through the media, it's this population, and it's through this government or this cabal. And it doesn't matter who wins the election. It's the same string pullers at the top. 2012, of course, is supposedly the end of the Mayan calendar, which signifies the beginning of a new age, or the end of a current age. Now, I've said for years that it's not going to be 2012. I have suggested, and if you listen to my past programs a couple of years ago, I said 2008 2008 was going to be the pivotal year. There are now probably a couple of hundred books out there with 2012 in the title. When we pass through this ugly year of 2008, and we've talked about this before, your projection for 2009 and 10 is actually more of the same, if not worse, correct?
Correct. Not more of the same, much more different stuff, and emotionally as, epic as anything we've seen so far. It just keeps going that way for years.
Didn't mean more of the same in terms of finance, but more of the same in terms of building language, anticipatory language, stress, anxiety, strain, and then releases. One after another after another. I mean, as you pointed out earlier, this is going to be like a roller coaster, up and down, up and down. You get up off the canvas, you get knocked back down again. It's going to be
we actually see it as being a sort of a schism point here, too, for the 7th anyway, in terms of how our metrics are laid out, that we leave normality. And it's like, everybody buckle your seatbelts at this stage and get a firm grasp on what it used to be.
This is interesting. When you say what's
we won't be coming back. The world of the 2009 will resemble 2010 much more than it resembles anything before October 7th, 2008. So we might. Go ahead, George.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, Jeff, it's going to be to the point over the next couple of years where literally the magnitude of the change will leave people literally frozen, unable to cope, requiring care of other humans.
Stumbling around, drooling on themselves.
Yeah, I mean, mental illness all over the place.
Yeah, it's as though you were suddenly shifted back in time to Russia immediately after the collapse, and you didn't even speak Russian, and you really weren't even sure where you were at.
You're talking about not only all 5 senses in terms of sensory overload, but overload to the extent that the
brain
dysfunctionality of millions of people becomes apparent, and they literally cannot cope. You're talking about that kind of thing?
Correct. And, of course, it'll be augmented by extremely poor diet, untenable weather conditions, et cetera. So their stressors are just going to be horrific.
Right. Well, the toxic food supply here, of course, is being used to great effect to reduce the immune system. All they have to do is tweak that bird virus just a little bit, and we'll have tens, if not 20s of millions of people gone around the world.
But more important, we'll have some very rich vaccine companies that are helping on the front end of it.
Of course, of course.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about money, Jeff.
Yeah,
but see, there we go, guys. I mean, if we're correct in our projections, there won't be a pharmaceutical industry as we know it 6 months from now to take out those loans to try and engineer those vaccines, nor will they necessarily even have the workforce available to them. It might be that staggering at the level of a shift. George, how long did it take to go from the crash in 29 to the highest level of unemployment in the previous depression?
Oh, gosh.
It took several years, didn't it?
I'm sorry?
Took several years.
Yeah, several years. But I think what Clif is getting to is that as the money dries up, I mean, right now,
it's going to accelerate.
Yeah, short-term funding problems are accelerating. They're not ending. And just to give you an idea of this mental paralysis issue, what would happen in a country where, say, greater than 50% of people are taking prescription medications, many of these Prozac and other coping drugs? What's going to be the response if all of a sudden it all goes cold turkey because of economics and distribution
Because most
issues?
of those drugs require foreign ships to bring material here in order for those drugs to be made, or the completed product even. Yeah.
Interesting. Well,
and if you cold turkey on some of those things, there's a high degree of going postal.
Hard to imagine that would be an industry that the controllers would allow to slip. There's too much money in it.
I understand, but the issue for us is that the level of interest in and caring about money for the most money-grubbing society on the planet, which is the USA, next year will be but a fraction of what it is today. We won't, because we'll have gone through it and we'll have lost the currency, the global reserve currency of the planet. People a year from now will not care much about money the way we do now.
Well, it's gone.
It'll be about food. It'll be about water. It'll be about
we're going to go to that despair period. Like George was saying, it may have taken 2, 3, or 4 years to go from the height of the market in 29 just before the crash until the greatest level of unemployment. Well, we're going to do that in 6 months.
This idea of mass mental illness, dysfunctionality, is very interesting because it can be certainly propagated via the mass media very easily with all kinds of subliminals. We know that.
Saw that in Japan with all the children who went crazy.
Absolutely correct. And we also know that the use of subliminals, I'm not just talking about flashing a word or a phrase here or there. I'm talking about extreme low frequency, ELF, and other electromagnetic issues that are embedded and folded into the audio and video that comes out of the television that can actually create mind states. We can talk about the Gwen towers. We can talk about satellites. We can talk about using the electronic grid, which I believe is a very primary tool of literally influencing the minds and the general state of well-being of hundreds of millions of people around the world. You can put things into the grid, and it surrounds you in your home, in your office. It literally comes right out of the wiring.
It's terrible. It's terrible. Yeah, I live in a Faraday cage. Not really, but I've got steel roof and multiply grounded. It's not a complete Faraday cage, but it does reduce a lot of that.
If you have the ability to put copper wire in your walls or in your ceiling and then run grounding rods into the ground, you'll be much healthier. But all this is doable. Very, very easily done, and I believe is being done already. Now, what you're saying is fascinating, and there are multiple ways that these goals can be certainly nurtured and eventually achieved by those who would seek to instill upon us that kind of mentality.
Yeah.
It's not a problem.
They're trying very hard. The interesting thing is that from a
they want to make us absolutely unable to engage.
They want us to be willing slaves. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
To where you were afraid to depart from their
protocols.
Nurture. Yeah, exactly. But the interesting thing about all of this is that the universe seems to favor a different outcome. And in spite of the fact that these people have been working for thousands of years, they're desperate to get this done in a short period of time, at least according to the language we have, because they know time is running out.
Agree. The window is going to close unless they get it done. Yeah. I concur. I'm just waiting to see how much longer the global warming hustle can stand. We know the planet is actually cooling. We may be headed toward an ice age. But the big issue is, again, the exploitation of 2012 and how they're going to use that as a lever to really obstruct humanity in a very
It's curious
way.
That the synchronization of the Mayan calendar and the Gregorian calendar paid for by Pope Gregory way the hell back when goes exactly to 11:11 a.m. on 2012. So we've got December 21. So they did it in order, and they encoded that. The 11:11 is one of their symbols for the hyperdimensional math and so on. And oh, by the way, we now have some interesting information coming out of Russia that there's perhaps a link between the setting off of nuclear material and the concentration of nuclear material in multiple dimensions. In other words, when we set off an atomic bomb, we not only blow a bunch of dust up into the atmosphere, we may indeed even be setting off repercussions in dimensions that we're not even aware of.
And some of the people over there may not like that.
Well, that's supposition, but they're saying that the torsion fields are certainly disturbed by concentrations of enough radioactive material in a primary state, and they wish they'd been able to observe with their new instruments some kind of a nuclear explosion, because maybe it indeed is quite actually destabilizing the local universe at the hyperdimensional level.
Did we manage to mention in here someplace, Jeff, we really hope we're wrong about this October 7th stuff?
We've talked about that before, George, and it certainly merits restating. We just have about 30 seconds left, so...
2 points real quick.
Yeah,
December
please.
10th through the 12th, everybody in the northern hemisphere in between 32 and 36 degree latitude would be well advised to bolt things down in case we're correct about a large earthquake.
December 10 through 12?
Correct. And one last thing, and when you're in the belly of the beast, remember to be indigestible.
All true. George, thank you. Great to talk with you again, my friend.
Our pleasure.
Okay, Clif, thank you, sir, and we'll be in touch.
Yep, on the other side.
Good night, you guys. HalfPastHuman.com. Visit the website, and I urge you to subscribe to their incredible data and research. It's remarkable. All right, a little over 2 hours to go before 12:10 a.m. Pacific time, October 7th. We'll see if anything happens. Talk to you tomorrow night in 21 hours, and we'll be with you at Rense.com in the meantime.